welcome everybody to this edition of DataCite Open Hours. This is your community meeting. This is our DataCite community meeting. So it's a good opportunity to say hi to other members of the community. So you can introduce yourself in the chat. And you can also ask questions. We really love to hear your questions. You can also raise your hand and actually unmute if you would like to speak to one of our presenters. And we will, of course, share the slides and the recording afterwards. So a few upcoming events to let you know about. We will be at Force in June. And we'll be hosting DataCite Connect in Singapore. So if you're going to be there, get in touch, let us know, and you can sign up to join in person. We would love to see you there. We'll also be hosting a webinar in April, on the 15th of April with Dataverse. And so if you're using Dataverse or if you're planning to install a Dataverse repository, please come along and find out more from Dataverse themselves, as well as a short presentation from us. And then finally, we've already set the dates for the next open hours throughout the year, so you can already sign up if you're very keen and excited about this. So today we will start the March open hours with some exciting presentations from new members. So we'll have Gustav and Matthew from HUB Ocean and Jeff from FigureTwo. And then we'll be hearing from our product managers, Cody and Kelly, about the recent releases and looking ahead. Lots of exciting things on the agenda today. So I will now hand over to hopefully Gustav and Matthew are here from HUB Ocean.
We are here.
Great. So please go ahead.
Okay. Nice to see you all. I'm Gustav Kågesten. I'm the science director of HUB Ocean. And then Matthew, maybe you present yourself.
Yep, Matthew Whaley, kind of product manager for the Ocean Data Platform that we're building.
Matthew will run our presentation and then we're open for questions. Yeah.
Great. Yes, let me see if I can get my head around this. Alrighty, hopefully you see my screen. Can do some live stuff rather than stick to slides, so hopefully that's interesting for everyone. So we work at HUB Ocean and we're building the Ocean Data Platform, which is a way of working with ocean data. We're a non-profit. We're trying to build this to serve the community in the best possible way. And becoming part of DataCite and the DOIs is a big part of that, I think. We see in our world, that there's lots of amazing data out there with DOIs. One of the things we're trying to do is make sure that data that's out there has a place where it can get really great access, that you can do a lot with the data, that it's powerful, that it's engaged. So when you get that landing page from your DOI, you're already up and running with data, basically. So that's what we're trying to bring to the world. So the Ocean Data Platform does three things, really. So I'm going to talk through those a little bit. First of all, accessing data. So if we just jump into the platform, this is the Ocean Data Platform that we're building. So you can browse our catalog of public data and you can find stuff with searches or a sort of spatial search and other things. And this is a big range of data. Some of it is data that is published for the first time and therefore deserves a DOI. Some of it has been is republished because people have published it somewhere already and they want to get some more features on top of that. And we also have the aspect of being able to create your own data on the Ocean Data Platform. So if you want to create a data set, you can do that, add metadata. And of course, that's where the magic of creating your own DOI comes into it. Because if you want to create data, put it somewhere and publish it, then the fact that we've now joined the DataCite community means that we can offer that people can make their own DOIs on the data itself. So I'll just go through a little bit more detail on that and show you some examples, for example. if we start, for example, with some data that you can find through DataCite Commons because we've published it now, what we see is, again, if you have the DOI that someone's published, this is some data coming from Norway. We're a non-profit based in Norway. That you get onto the landing page of the data set. And of course, you have the metadata, the citations, and all this stuff. You have some coverage, so you can see where the data is itself. And we try to get straight into the data itself. So, you can have a number of files and descriptions and things like that as part of the data set, but also that it's an opportunity to see straight away, get an idea of what's the content of that data, and really try to elevate that to that first landing page that people get to. That means that you have the option in the application to then sort of explore the data itself. So if you actually want to kind of do some fairly basic but sort of interesting visualizations, you can do. See, for example, where the points are, do some querying on that if you only are interested in certain bits of it, and do some kind of basic visualization on the data. So this is some current speed monitored by a drifting buoy, for example. Then you can do that. And if you wish to then work with that data, you have the options available to you, essentially of a kind of modern platform. So if you want to then take that data out into some kind of file, that there are some options for you there. And of course, we also built this whole thing based on APIs and SDKs. So options for interacting with data through a Python SDK or an R SDK and working with that, for example, in the data science workspace or that you have, or using it in things like GIS applications. I'm not going to switch my screen to something else, but I'll just show you a screenshot. If you load the OGC features, for example, you can work with that if you want to work in a separate application. And we're currently bringing vector tiles to the mix as well, so that people can embed data in either web apps or use it in a different way. So, we're trying to make sure that every data set that it comes as part of ODP gets these kind of features that allow people to use it and elevate it as much as possible, so that the data gets the most possible value and impact for the world, essentially. Just to mention a couple other things. So, some other aspects. This is another data set that we have. Again, the old DOI thing going back to the landing page. This is some other data that we've worked with dbSeabed, which is a fantastic aggregation of substrate data across the world. And this, again, options to make the data a little bit more interactive. In this case, there are some files that you can preview, for example, and get the sense of what the data is, or download them and utilize them in whatever environment you may have. I think, we'd like to also just mention a little bit, the kinds of data that we work with. I think we are trying to be a platform that serves all communities, whether they're established scientific communities, which typically have their own ways of working already, but there are some gaps in where data can be in flow. So we try to provide value there. We also work a lot with industry. So there's a lot of industry data out there. For example, stuff published by PGS, which is very interesting. And this is data that is captured by industry, and they're not so sure where to share it often. So we can help them in that process. And also part of that process is making sure they get the recognition and citation and attribution of that data. Another good example of that is some biomarine echosounder data, which is a lot of interesting echosounder data captured from some fishing vessels, for example. Yeah, I won't show you all these things since we'll keep this nice and brief for you all. And I think finally, I'd mention, really that we also have one of the big drivers towards good citations. There's also, we have a sister organization called RevOcean, which is building a kind of state-of-the-art research vessel, which will be creating a huge amount of data shared with the world as well, from all the sort of most advanced systems they have, ROVs, AUVs. So there'll be some huge, some huge data coming from them that all deserves strong attribution and value. I think I've covered the main points quicker than I thought. Gustav, do you have anything to throw in the mix that you think?
Maybe you can mention the Jupyter Lab workspaces we have
Yeah,
as well.
that's a good point. So, as mentioned, we try to do kind of three jobs. One is accessing data. Accessing can come in different forms, both finding it in the catalog, using it in the app, also working with it in data science environments. So we have this Jupyter Lab workspace. And I haven't really primed this up, but essentially any kind of notebooks, R or Python notebooks that you want to do analysis in can be here. I don't know if I have a good example to show you, but yeah, we can pull up this one maybe. Just to kind of show how you can connect with data in a data science environment. There's obviously a lot of other tools for this. If you want to use your own local environment, that's what a lot of people will do. But this is an opportunity to get people going if they haven't got pre-installed Python packages and everything, so you can access data. And again, this is kind of one of those modes of access. And like I say, sort of one of those three jobs. So whether you want to access the data and use it, whether you want to create data yourself, like I mentioned, through the creation of new data sets on ODP, and of course, publishing data to the public catalog, which is, freely available and open to all to do so. So, yeah, I mean, really, this platform is just to stress, free and open to all for access and for creating and adding data sets. So, if you're at all interested in the domain and the topic and the platform, please do go and have a look. And yeah, very happy to have some feedback and comments from anyone interested in looking at this. So yeah, nice to be part of the community, and thanks for the moment in the sun.
Great.
Really nice. Great to see the implementation of the DOIs on your landing pages and that you're up and running. It looks great. Does anybody have any questions for Gustav or Matthew? So Maria asks, what sort of licenses for data are used on your platform?
I can have a go, Matthew.
Okay.
Yeah, really it's about what the source license was at, right? So we try to encourage CC licenses to make life easy for people. But as long as the data is, useful and legal to publish on the platform, any licenses are allowed. But yeah, when you go and create a data set, we do have CC0, CC BY, etc. as the first choices for people.
Yeah, I mean, as with the kind of publishing aspect and new data on the platform, in those cases that we're creating DOIs, obviously by definition it's kind of newly published, and then in that case it is the provider's choice as typically, the person who is the owner, the author, the legal responsible of the data get to choose essentially what their license is. So we don't force people to choose one or the other, but yeah, if they're in doubt, we'll try to. We would love everything to be open, but everyone has their right to what they choose.
Thank you. Any other questions? I think we can move on, but please feel free to continue the conversation in the chat. Thank you very much to Gustav and Matthew. That was wonderful. We'll now move on to Jeff from FigureTwo. So go ahead. 'Cause
Hi, folks. Hopefully slides are showing up.
Looks good.
Thanks, Mary. So I'm Jeff Lang, and I'm the founder and CEO of FigureTwo. I'll be walking you through the platform today. At its fundamental level, what we're looking to do with FigureTwo is to make it easier for authors to create engaging and transparent and understandable figures by taking a look at a number of the underlying pieces of figure creation and archiving and accessibility and research integrity that already exist, trying to repackage them in new ways to help make it easier for people to go about their tasks. We're trying to make it simple for authors to be able to do the jobs of making accessible figures without having to worry about things like creating them in a data connected way, or worried about mobile activity, or worried about fair compliance. So the goal is to make it simple to do and make it the default choice for people when they have when they're not sure how to address all of those challenges. And to start with, it's useful to take a look at a common type of figure today. This is a real figure that has been published. And you can see the author made some attempts to try to make this as understandable as possible, but it falls short in a number of ways. Not only are the colors difficult and the contrast can be challenging, actually, they did a great job with the size of the labels, the font for those labels, but not so great when we take a look at the key on the side here. Now it can be difficult. And of course, you can zoom in on this figure, but it's a static figure, so you're not going to get any more resolution out of it. And it makes it difficult to understand what's going on. Certainly for anyone who's outside of the specific area of study, but even people who have certain limitations in color or in sight in general. And even if this figure did have alt text, I can't remember offhand if this one had alt text associated with it, it would be hard to think of alt text that could accurately describe what was going on and help somebody fundamentally understand the story to be told behind this image. And even further, this is actually the data link for the figure in the article. Fantastic. We know this article has data, or this figure has data. However, when we click on the link, we get essentially a zip file with a number of different files in it. It's very difficult to associate with the thing that we just took a look at. So if you had questions about that, the underlying data in that figure, you might be able to suss them out. You very well might find yourself struggling to be able to suss it out. And that fact alone is a barrier that's going to limit most people from being able to further engage with the data underneath that figure. This is a FigureTwo figure. So you can create multiple different elements of your canvas. They can be data, they can be graphic, and you can see they're all pulled together here in a way that encourages accessibility. You can actually zoom in on different data elements to get a deeper understanding of what's going on in the figure. And if you click on a data point, you'll be able to say view in data and jump down to the tabular description of this data so that you can actually take a look at the different rows that went into creating this visualization and get a rich understanding of what's going on. In fact, as you navigate through, you'll also be able to click on view in chart to jump from the data set back up to the visualization itself and understand what's going on. And if you do have visual limitations of any kind, you can adjust the output. This is not a static image. It's actually the live interactive version of it. So different filters and different color schemes can be applied to help with your personal understanding of the underlying data. So here's a screenshot of our site. I'm realizing that my video is covered here. Hopefully you all are seeing through to the full screen. But somebody let me know if you're not able to see that upper right-hand corner where we have the blue box that shows the publish. And this is really where I want to spend some time today. I hope you'll all spend a little bit of time taking a look at this afterwards. But in the DataCite context, what we're adding, and actually this feature will be available later this week, is the ability to make your figures public as well. And when you make a figure public, you're able to get a DOI, a DataCite DOI, that shares that figure and make sure that it is permanently archived as well. So we can see we're taking this data and this figure that we've pulled together, and we're preparing to go through our workflow here. And it'll pop up and it'll remind the author, if they haven't yet filled out some of this basic information, about the things that they tend to think most about first. So things like the title of their figure, if they're going to use a subtitle, things like the caption. And then we'll continue working them through this workflow and prompting them for other useful information. You can store your ORCID in our profile information. You can store the information of your collaborators as well. And then, of course, that all gets moved into DataCite when you're ready to publish your figure. We work with ROAR to get information about institutions so that you can hopefully pick an institution that's already got identifiers associated with it, and we'll encourage authors to do that. If their institution does not have those types of identifiers, they can still put that information in as well. And same is true here for related indicators and for funding indicators. We're integrated with FundReft here to be able to find information about your award if it's available. Over time, of course, our intent is to tie this closer and closer into the systems that researchers and authors are using so that they don't have to necessarily put this information in themselves. They can pull it directly from other places as they integrate their data. But for now, as we're still working through some of those types of integrations, at the very least, authors can add this information themselves. And now you can see we've finished the process and we've published this figure. It gets its own link on our site that is permanent and archived on Portico. So that data will always be available, the figure will always be available, and the live interactivity will always be available on our site. You can include your DOI now in the caption for your paper that you're sending off to either a preprint server or that you're sending off for publication with one of the major publishers, or that you simply want to post online either in communities that you participate in or in working groups to gather more information, perhaps on the way to publication. And this is actually one of the things that I think is unique about what we're doing. We're trying to put the tools for DOIs, for preservation directly into the hands of authors. It was great to see the HUB Ocean folks doing similar things and allowing people to create data sets and add their own DOIs. One of the challenges that oftentimes things like archiving and identifiers are stored behind third-party groups. So as an individual researcher, you need to do your work and then send it off to somebody else before you're able to get those sort of identifiers. In this case, we're encouraging authors to start getting those identifiers right from the start and enter into the scholarly record as they do their work. And inevitably, as authors go through this process, they will find that there are reasons to update their data or update the metadata associated. And we'll come back to that in a second. I jumped ahead of myself on my slides. I want to talk a little bit about the broken process here for figures first. And the challenge being that, of course, there are tools to do many of these things that I was showing already today. You can go about creating your data sets. You can analyze them in many different tools. You can produce those figures in many different tools, but there are broken links between each and every one of these steps. And what Figure 2 is looking to do is tie these links back together. When you create your figure based on data that you've brought in from another system or collected in some other way, and then you get feedback from a PI or from an editor, you need to go back to the start, you need to make those changes, then you need to import it into another Canvas editing tool and update your figure, and eventually get through to another DOI or archive state later. What we're looking to do with Figure 2 is to change that process and to connect to all of it. When you make changes to your underlying data, they flow into your workspace. And when you are ready to put them into the scholarly record, then you're able to publish them straight from here and get into dissemination. Of course, this is only one of the elements of dissemination, but being able to take that Figure 2 figure and include it in your preprint, include it in your manuscript, include it in your open access database. All of those are ways to make sure that this data becomes available and doesn't have gatekeeping or limitations on it. And in fact, as changes are needed or new opportunities are identified, you can make this a living work and continue to update it as appropriate. Every time you update a new version of this figure, it gets its own unique DOI. Those DOIs are linked together through metadata, and they're linked together on the Figure 2 site as well. So if, as a researcher, you encounter one of these figures and you're wondering whether or not it's the latest, you can follow it through to Figure 2, or you can follow the DataCite metadata and identify whether or not there's a more recent version of this information. But you'll always be able to link back to that version that was added to the record, and it'll be preserved as indefinitely as well. All right. Now here we are talking a little bit about that next step of updating information for new versions. This is actually something I think perhaps is worth some conversation with the DataCite community broadly about. Perhaps we should start including things like caption metadata or comment metadata as well. In this case, the comment metadata is stored within FigureTwo, and it's a way to track through as long as the author chooses to add this information. We can keep a record of this and it'll be published along with that live shared version. So here we are back sort of to the beginning, taking a look at a figure on FigureTwo that's been shared. You can see all of the metadata here showing up at the top of our figure page, as well as the ability to dig down and navigate through the figure data itself. And as we scroll down the page, you'll be able to see that tabular data and move back and forth between them. And if we continue scrolling, we'll see even more metadata about the history of the publication of this manuscript. I'd like to encourage everybody to come and take a look at what we're doing at FigureTwo. You can log in and create your free account today. Free accounts allow you to upload data sets and get started working on them. You'll be able to export directly to PNG and get accessible figures there. If you would like to then preserve your data and make it available publicly, you're able to set up your account to do that as well, and hopefully address any funding mandates that you may have around data availability and accessibility, and our own interest in making data as available as possible. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jeff. There's a few questions in the chat, so I'll just get right to it. The first one is from Rebecca, who says, how long is the interactivity expected to last? 6 months, 6 years? And what is the plan if Portico is no longer available?
So the intent is that the interactivity will last permanently. We're using Vega for the underlying data visualizations, which is an open source tool. We're archiving all of the information needed to make that data available. We preserve it ourselves, so we're not relying on Portico as the only place, but Portico is the dark archive to make sure that if anything ever happened to FigureTwo, that your data would continue to be available. We also recognize that there's no reason for data that's already being stored in other places to be stored exclusively in FigureTwo, so we're looking to build integrations with other tools where this data may already be stored. That's on our roadmap, and we'd be open to talking to any other folks about integrating with systems that are and repositories that are already storing this data.
Great, thanks. Thomas says, is the underlying data also stored on your platform and Portico?
Yes, so it's stored in both places. It's every version of it is stored on our platform. Every version of the underlying data set is stored within Portico, and then the metadata, anytime there are metadata exclusive updates, those all go directly into DataCite as well as being stored on our site.
Okay, great. I'm going to keep firing questions at you. So Brian says, I might have missed this, but are these figure records connected to the data files published in a separate repository? And if changes are made in the underlying data that requires a new version of record, etc., many of us are navigating requirements for accessibility. It would be great to hear your thoughts on how FigureTwo incorporates accessibility.
Yeah. So I think 2 parts there. We do need to still build out ways to make it easy for researchers to tie to other data sets. I would say, the simple thing we've done so far is to make it so that you can easily use those related information fields to tie it to a data set that already exists. Yes, it's a way to do it today. It's certainly not sufficient, and it's not the kind of thing that most authors will actually do. The long-term goal is to make it very easy to use drag and drop and to do integrations to tie those things together. So that's certainly on our roadmap. And like I said, we're open to conversations with anybody. I suspect there are probably a number of folks on this call who could help in those kinds of conversations, and we're really open to starting that kind of dialogue. So in the long term, our goal is to make sure that those links happen automatically and that the authors and researchers don't have to do that heavy lifting themselves. But from the accessibility point of view, I think this is actually a big change, which is, we've focused a lot on FAIR data, and I've been amazed at the amount of energy that has gone into encouraging authors to follow FAIR guidelines. Universities support authors trying to make their data fair. We have an entire community around it. And in fact, we haven't put the same level of effort into accessibility. And I'm really hoping that some tools that make it easier to do and that fundamentally make it easier to complete the job of making your figure both accessible and data available will be the kinds of things that encourage people to take that next step and recognize that really data accessibility and availability are twins. They go hand in hand. And I think the more that we encourage people to see them as the same thing, and the more that we encourage people not to think of data archiving as something you do when your paper is done, but something that you do as you're making your figures for presentation, I think it'll just make the accessibility workflow and the data availability workflow much easier.
Yeah, really exciting. Great. I'll just, with an eye on the clock, go to one more question from Thomas, who says, so for publishing a figure 2 chart with an article, the idea is to export a PNG for insertion in the paper with a DOI for readers to get to the interactive version.
Yeah, that's right. So you still need to get that that static version of your figure. So you can export a high resolution version of that. You can export an SVG version of it if your publishing platform will allow you to do so. You can take that file with you, and that's part of our free package. If you need to then preserve the data and make it available long term, that's where we need to make sure that that you sign up for an account and that you have some sort of payment for that account, and that's what enables us to make the long term preservation of the files available. And by including then that DOI in your caption, it instantly enters the public record, even if no publisher does any other work. Our long term goal again is to work with the manuscript submission tools, to the preprint tools, the delivery platform tools, and make this a seamless integration so that you would be able to just take that DOI link and bring it into your submission platform and not have to worry about whether or not it's going to get the right export of the right, of the right resolution. Those are all things that we can work on in the long run. But for now, getting that DOI means that your figure is already part of the scholarly record and you can include it in your manuscript now.
Brilliant. Okay, I'll let you have a look at the chat because there's a few more comments in there. But thank you very much for your presentation and for answering those questions. I'm going to pass it over to Kelly and Cody now, who are going to talk a little bit about DataCite's latest releases and what's on the roadmap to look forward to.
Yeah, thank you, Mary. And also, yeah, big round of applause to Jeff, Matthew, and Gustav. It's always really fascinating to see all the different work that's happening across the DataCite member community. And yeah, I was really excited to see how you're using DataCite and also what you're up to. So yeah, thanks again. So yeah, next, we're excited to share some recent release updates from DataCite, and then after that, some looking ahead items that outline some work that we are currently doing. So of the recent releases, first we'll highlight the public data file for 2025, as well as the new monthly data file. Then we'll talk about several new organization level reporting tools and other tools for reporting unfunded works. And following that, the new DataCite Metadata Schema version, which is 4.7. And then finally, the new metadata dashboard for investigating metadata improvements. So in January, we released the annual public data file for 2025. This is the newest public data file and contains metadata for all 108 million publicly available DataCite DOI records that were registered up to the end of 2025. That's 36 million new records since the last public data file in 2024, and then 23 million updates as well. So it's accessible through our public data files portal, along with all of the public data files released in previous years. And this year, the public data file is also available on Google BigQuery through a partnership with Digital Science. So we're really excited to have this tool for metadata harvesting, analysis, and investigation in the hands of the community. Next is the DataCite Monthly Data File, which is a new service also released in January. Like the public data file, the monthly data file contains metadata for all publicly available DataCite DOIs. But unlike the public data file, which is released annually, we generate a new monthly data file at the beginning of each month. So the data file is distributed via AWS S3 and can be easily accessed using AWS tools like AWS CLI, APIs, and other SDKs. And each monthly data file replaces the last. So the current monthly data file is always the newest available. You can retrieve the entire file or just parts that are relevant to you, like the records that have been added or changed since your last ingest. And in addition to DataCite DOI records, the monthly data file also contains reports that can be used to identify DOIs that have been made publicly unavailable or DOIs that have moved between repositories. Access is available using DataCite member, consortium organization, or repository credentials. And yeah, we really encourage you to explore the documentation and try out the service. And this is one we're really excited about. So next, an update to organization pages in DataCite Commons to enable new organization level reporting workflows. Organization pages in DataCite Commons have always displayed a list of works associated with an organization, but you can now explore those works based on how they're connected to the organization according to their organizational relationship types, using new facets that we've added to organization pages. So these facets include works by researchers affiliated with an organization, works created or contributed to or published by an organization, and then finally works funded by an organization, which includes all of its child organizations. So in addition to that, when exploring works related to an organization, understanding the usage of those works can be valuable for reporting and analysis. And to support this type of investigation, we've added a new metrics widget in the related work section of organization pages. So whenever a new facet or query is added, the widget dynamically calculates the key usage metrics of matched works like citations, views, and downloads. So that's also available in related works. And lastly, some funding organizations consist of multiple units, and it can be valuable to track funded outputs from the parent organization as well as its individual child organizations. And so for these use cases, organization pages in DataCite Commons now include works funded by the organization, as well as its organizational institutes, units, programs, and more. So that usage for these works is factored into aggregated metrics at the top of every organization page, as well as in the related work section. So a lot to dig into there for organizations. You can explore your own organization or any other organization available in the ROR registry. So we've also made these funded works reporting tools accessible in the REST API. So it's easier to retrieve funded works by an organization and its child organizations. There are two parameters to support this at the DOI's endpoint. Funded by, which accepts a ROR ID and returns DataCite DOIs containing either the organization's ROR ID or Crossref funder ID and the DataCite funder identifier metadata. And then second, include funder child organizations, which is a flag that allows you to expand your query to DOIs funded by an organization, as well as all of its child organizations. Both the DataCite Commons and REST API funded works features leverage organizational metadata in the research organization registry, or ROR, as many as you know, in addition to DataCite DOI metadata. So this is sort of an exciting PID connectivity use case that we're excited to highlight. Next, I'm going to hand off to Kelly to talk about Schema 4.7 and the metadata dashboards.
Great, thanks so much, Cody. So earlier this month, we just released Schema 4.7 to support some new and evolving use cases. So just to go through these updates, first, there's some new resource type general values for posters and presentations. And this means you can now register DOIs for these resource types and have that specified in the resource type general. And you can also specify this in metadata connections to your related posters and presentations through the related identifier metadata. So we've also, speaking of related identifiers, we've added some new related identifier types, and these facilitate connections between DataCite DOIs and projects and software code artifacts. So we've added RAIDs, research activity identifiers, and SWIDs, or software heritage identifiers, as new related identifier type options. We've also made a couple changes to make the relation types more flexible. So there's now a relation type other, which is a fallback option for when none of the other options fit your use case. There's also a new subproperty here, relation type information, where you can specify some more detail about the relationship. So that's particularly critical when other is selected as the relation type. We do plan to use this relation type information metadata, helping us to identify some gaps and ambiguities in the existing vocabulary, and to kind of inform future updates with that context. And then finally, we've also made some changes to the documentation to help answer some frequently asked questions. These include the documenting the language, the XML lang property, refreshed examples for the resource type general control vocabulary, and other changes. And so you can check out all of this, all the updates in the schema documentation, and also read more in our blog post, which we'll put in the chat. Just to note also, as with all of our minor versions for schemas, Schema 4.7 is backward compatible. It's also supported across our APIs and the Fabrica web interface. So you can use these features now for new DOIs, and also you can update your existing DOIs to have more accurate and complete metadata using these features. Next, I'm really excited to share about the metadata dashboard. And so this is the tool for monitoring DataCite metadata quality, and also for identifying opportunities for improving your metadata. So through this dashboard, you can search for any DataCite member, consortium organization, or repository to view a snapshot of their metadata quality. And so I'm actually going to do a quick live demo for you now. You can also go to metadata.datacite.org, search for your organization's name there, and explore. So let me just share my screen, demo this. Okay, so yeah, this is the homepage for the dashboard. And here you can search for any DataCite member, consortium organization, or repository. And so just for an example here, I will search for Zenodo. You can see this come up under the repositories in the results. And there we go. So yeah, this has an overview of all of the DOIs registered in the Zenodo repository. So there's an overview panel at the top here showing the total number of DOIs, a breakdown of registrations by year, and the resource types. The dashboard shows the overall completeness for each metadata property. There's also this percentage of completeness for certain subproperties. And for some, there's the top value. So here you can see if you're looking at Zenodo's, they've got everything has a creator, which makes sense. It's a required property. About 23.7% of their DOIs have a name identifier. And of those with the name identifiers, we're mostly seeing ORCID IDs in their name identifier metadata. Each of the fields has a description here and links out to our schema documentation, so you can have more information there. So we got this for scroll down so you can see the overviews here for these properties and the different subproperties that we are exposing here. To go back to the top, we have these filter functionality here as well. So you can, if you wanted to look at just the DOIs that were registered in a certain year, you can do that, and all of these stats below will change. Similarly, you can also filter down by resource type and look at those more granular stats. One thing I also want to show here is that you can filter this by the same search syntax that you use across our other services. So for the REST API and for Commons, for example, if you wanted to look at just the DOIs that have affiliation identifiers, I can do this type of search looking for things with a creator affiliation identifier, any value in that field, and then explore what that subset looks like more specifically here. Whenever you've got any of these filters apply at the top, there's the filtering is applied to the whole page. And you can also view the related works, the filtered works in Commons. So this already applies the same filter queries we had there, and also in the REST API. So this is a tool you can use to evaluate your DataCite metadata. The filtering piece can also allow you to drill down and see, okay, what if I'm looking for things that don't have an affiliation identifier? What are those DOIs? And then be able to identify those for improvement. And yeah, so that is our live demo for the dashboard. And we're really excited to see what everyone does with this tool. We're also continuing to seek feedback on this and gather your ideas. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us with that. And I think when we get to the end here, we'll also share kind of how you can share product suggestions with us through our DataCite suggestions portal. So yeah, I'm going to stop sharing this and we can go back to the slides. Cody, do you want to? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly.
Great, thanks. Yeah, so I guess just to close here, we wanted to share a few things that we're working on and also some ways to share your ideas with us. So the first thing is some schema changes that are in the pipeline right now. So we just posted a couple new requests for comment on proposed schema changes. The first one is a proposed new property for describing who can access a resource and also any restrictions related to accessing. So currently the schema does not have a specific way to include the access rights or availability. We've heard that filters want to be able to, the harvesters want to be able to filter for open access content only, so they can only include content that is publicly available in their service. Also that repositories want to designate when their content is publicly available versus restricted, and to then also describe if there's any more specific access restrictions on content. So we got that proposal out. You check that, we'll put that in the chat here. And the second one here is a small change to the definition for books to be more inclusive of different formats, specifically for digital books. So the current definition refers to being bound between a cover and it's very like grounded in a physical book. So we just wanted to make that more expansive and align that with kind of other definitions that like is used for ORCID and the core resource types and other things. So you can check those out on GitHub with the links we will share in the chat here. And also, as I just mentioned, there have been other RFCs recently that are still in the pipeline for implementation. So there's the batch of things that were shared that were released in 4.7. There's also a few things that we've had open for comment since then. And so if you are curious about what those are, you can look at the RFCs on DataCite suggestions and filter by the closed ones. Just off the top of my head, we had a contributor type for reviewers, a new property for distribution, and some new relation types for outputs. And so although those are closed, they're still there, so you can check out what might be coming next for Schema 4.8. I think I will now hand it back to Cody to talk about metadata enrichments.
Great, yeah. So just a small update on our work on enrichments. As you may know, DataCite is exploring approaches for improving metadata quality through community-based enrichment processes in which enriched metadata will coexist, not replace or override original DOI metadata. The ultimate goal here is to enhance research, discovery, reuse, and reporting across the research ecosystem by improving the quality and precision of DOI metadata, harnessing trusted downstream metadata enhancements to do so. We've been refining our enrichment data model alongside our partners at Collaborative Metadata, or COMET, and we are now in the process of ingesting enrichment records that COMET has created. These enrichment records describe key enhancements to DataCite DOI metadata, connecting them to organizations with affiliation identifier and other resources with related identifier. Ingested enrichment records sit apart from original DOI metadata submitted by repositories. And next, we plan to demonstrate how these enrichment records can be used to enhance the discoverability and usability of DataCite DOI metadata in concert with original DOI metadata, and continue to collaborate with the community on ongoing development in the enrichment space, including tools for enrichment curation. We're really appreciative of all the feedback we've received thus far. So thank you to everyone who's participated in various ways, from open hours to different other outreach methods that we've executed in the past 6 or so months. All of that feedback continues to guide our approach, and yeah, we're excited to continue to advance this work together. Should we pause for any questions that are in the chat? I see a notification there, so.
Yeah, thanks, Cody and Kelly. There is a question from Rebecca, which Kelly has already answered, but I'm going to read it out anyway. And it says, for some simpler requests that weren't included, e.g. relation types, will there be comments on those discussions to indicate whether they will be considered for the next minor version? Did you want to comment on that, Kelly, in case anyone's not monitoring the chat?
Yeah, for sure. So we try to respond to all suggestions, especially when we first get them, to kind of gauge more context about them and figure out what we need to know about to explore it. And so if there's something where you've got a specific question about what the status is, please feel free to follow up on that and I can let you know. Often we're considering a few things kind of in combination and there's ongoing conversations about them. So I'm always happy to give a more specific status update. For relation types, there is one, I think I mentioned that the output has output relation type is output of, and so that would be, I think, currently on track for 4.8. It just didn't quite make it in time for 4.7.
Thank you. And another question from Rebecca is, will the FAIR assessment tool created by Ted Haberman of Metadata Game Chambers changes be incorporated into the metadata dashboard? Will site-width be considered to support reference publications?
Yes, these are, I think, two separate questions. For the dashboard one, we're definitely excited by Ted's FAIR assessment tool. I think looking to that for inspiration. I think it does some different things, and I think it lives well as its own notebook. But then I think there's aspects of that we might look to incorporate in future designs. So I think these can kind of complement each other with the different things you can do with each tool. For site width, I think that's one we're still exploring. And so I am happy to follow up more with you on that. Just basically ways to link kind of associated things together that should be cited together and what the right mechanism is for that. Yeah, thanks for your questions.
Yeah, thanks, Rebecca, for your excellent questions. We really appreciate people getting excited about these things and asking lots of questions. So that's wonderful. I don't see any more questions in the chat. So did Kelly and Cody, do you have anything else?
Yeah. Just some closing comments generally about providing feedback and otherwise connecting with us, which we're always excited about. So as always, we welcome suggestions for features and enhancements to DataCite services and the DataCite Metadata Schema on our discussion board, which is called DataCite Suggestions. Community suggestions help us make decisions about what to work on next and what needs attention. So we really appreciate all of the feedback that we receive there. It's really super helpful. We also use that space, as Kelly mentioned earlier, to post information, updates, requests for comment about work in process and other opportunities to contribute. So please check out that space for more opportunities. And if you'd prefer not to post on suggestions for whatever reason, or if you'd like to communicate with us in a different way, you can always send an email to support@datacite.org and we will keep in touch there. And if you haven't already, we encourage you to sign up to our community mailing list to receive updates about our services and community activities. I think we'll probably put a subscription link in the chat. Yes, I'm so excited to have you there as well, where we also post some ongoing service updates in the form of release notes that have more granular detail about the things that we're releasing and working on. And that, I believe, closes the session. Thank you so much for joining. Really excited to have you here and to share all of these updates with you. And also excited to keep the conversation going beyond open hours.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you to our speakers, Gustav, Matthew, and Jeff, and also Kelly and Cody, as always. And have a good rest of your day and see you next time, everybody.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.